Hello, everybody. How's it all going in the world of lockdown? I don't know about you, but I've been in this room for about 6 months now, and I'm missing the vibe of being at live events. But this is the one of the closest we get to it, so it should be fun. My name's Dave, or Hazelhurst, apparently, or Hazleyhurst, as Natasha wants to call me. I'm one of the partners, one of the owners at Ph.Creative. We're based in the centre of the universe, and we're an employer brand agency, and we work with loads of different clients, which you're probably not that bothered about, but we do work a lot in the world of attracting and retaining and engaging tech talent. Probably everybody says they're almost a tech company now, and tech talent is very, very hard to get hold of, hard to keep and retain it, and stuff like this. So what I thought I'd do is just run through some of the things that we find out, our approach to stuff, how we think about it, and the process that we might go through to start to understand and decode tech talent and what we should do with that. So first things first is there's two parts to this story. The first part is you, the organization. Who are you? What's it like to work there? What does it feel like? What are the experiences you create for employees? You know, what makes you different? What makes you stand out? What are those secret things that you wish people knew, but were always afraid to ask, or you never quite got it out there? So that's the first thing. And that is all part of your employer brand and your EVP and your messaging, if you like. And then, of course, there's them. And they are the tech talent. It could be cybersecurity, it could be front back end developers, coders, digital managers, digital project managers, all these different talent segments, if you like, in the world of tech. But what's really important is understanding who they are, what makes them tick, their behaviors, what influences them, how do we convince them, how do we engage them, all those different things. And we want to find out and understand who they are, because we then want to be able to have the right messages in the right place at the right time to bring them towards us. And actually, once they start to come into the organization, they start to work for us. How can we best retain them, reward, recognition, all that good stuff? So there are always two sides to the story that we're trying to figure out. And when it comes to messaging, one of the things that we've been doing a lot here at PH is we want to talk about the harsh realities. In employer brand, when we think of attraction, a lot of people think of it as, first of all, being an external thing. And then secondly, it's always about, selling all the glossy stuff, the great things that we do here. But often we don't talk about the real harsh realities and show our vulnerability. And actually, if you look in the world of consumer branding, that can be very successful. So it's the frat-fall effect. And here's just a couple of examples. I don't know about you, but I don't mind Marmite on my brown toast. Got to be brown toast in the morning. Don't mind a bit of that. But actually, it's very, it's love it or hate it. So if we think about that, it's the same in our day life at work, I suppose, or nightlife, or whatever the hell it is. We have our best day. Everything's great. We're going like a mogwai. We're all really happy. But then we have our worst day. And don't be afraid to unearth the real harsh realities, the challenges, the struggles that go on day to day, the mountains that sometimes we have to climb to actually, for that sense of achievement, and actually, tackling big challenges are things that tech talent loves. They want to solve big problems. They want to put their minds to big problems. So actually understanding what it takes to really thrive in those challenges can be really, really important to us. And we would call that the give and the get as well. So, what does somebody have to really give in your organization to really thrive, to shine, to help crack those big challenges, that sense of achievement, that sense of belonging, and what do they get in return? And this would just be a very sort of top outline of how, in terms of a product developer, how we might start to think about, right, okay, what's the give and what's the get? And if you were to say, take, I don't know, 10, 20 of your tech employees, and, you put them in a room or a virtual room, and you were to say, hey guys and girls, what does it really take to thrive in our organization, and what do we get in return? And actually, if you want to find out a little bit more about reward and recognition, you might go, what would you like in return? And that might give you some insights in terms of reward. But this give and get is really important in terms of messaging, because once we figure out what makes us unique, what makes us tick, and the give and get, we then need to put that message out there in the right place at the right time, which we'll come on to. So we're doing a lot of this at the moment, in particular companies that have got current EVPs or propositions that probably don't have this real layer, this honest, transparent layer of this give and get. So that's something to think about. So then we need to go and start to think about the audience in some more detail, and talk a lot about data tells us what, humans tell us why. And, you know, in the world of tech, we're obsessed with data. We're probably in some ways almost becoming data drunk. You know, when we talk about being data, you know, data driven, you know, and I think we should probably be more data informed, and then we should speak to humans, because humans tell us why the what is happening. And inside of there are the stories and the insights and where the magic happens and helps really get to the bottom of what makes these people tick. So I thought I'd just pull some stuff out. So as you all know, developers love a little bit of Stack Overflow. So I've just gone to last year's survey. The Stack Overflow survey is fantastic. It's about 80,000 respondents around the world. And there's loads of data. So you don't necessarily need to go out and do your own data, because there's loads of data that's already published. Hire, they've just released their employer brand report. That's all about tech. But this is a really nice piece of work. So I just pulled some things out. What's interesting here is most important job factors. So imagine we walk into the pub and there's tech people and they're just talking about what's important to them. Now we're starting to understand what that is. So we can see the all respondents, but what's really cool with Stack Overflow is we can start to toggle that between men, women, and non-binary. And what's interesting is what their preferred, most important part of job factors are. So we can see with men, like the top three: languages, frameworks, office environment, or home environment, probably now at the moment, flexible time, flexible schedule. If we look at women, it's office environment is number one. It's number two for men. Flexible schedule is number two, and opportunities, professional development is number three. Whereas that's number four for men. And what that's telling us is there's different levels of interest of what they might want to hear about first, and that can actually make us think about the content, the stories we want to tell, when we're starting to think about how we might be putting messages and attracting diverse pool in terms of men and women there as an example. So that's quite interesting. The other thing, and I think some of the other sessions have talked about this in a bit more detail, is do they want to become manager? Does tech talent want to become a manager in the future? Do they want to become leaders? And we do loads of workshops with tech talent. It's always really interesting. They don't necessarily want to become managers. They just want to get better at coding, new frameworks, different tech stacks. They're excited about a tech stack. But it's interesting here because if you look at that, well, 5% are already a manager. Only 25% saying they want to be a manager. So that's 69, nearly 70% are either not sure or no. Now, so you need to think about, what does that mean in the stories that we tell to attract and engage tech talent? And then what I think is quite interesting, I'm going to talk about this a little bit later, is that they change jobs quite regular. You know, so 55% there of 80 respondents are the last change jobs within the last 2 years. So that's quite high, I think. I think that they're moving quite quick. So how you stay connected to them, or how you think about how you retain them, is really, really interesting as well. This is from Total Jobs. They do a really nice piece of work that comes out, and it's all kinds of different regions. But what's interesting about this is it can be segmented by country. And what you can see across down the left-hand side is some of the core themes, if you like, the editorial themes of interest to tech talents, like appreciation, always improving, security first. I'd imagine that's gone up in the latest round of this survey. And there is a bit of life after work, money matters and relationships matter. And there's some of the core things. But what you can see is how they're different in different locations. So like in Germany, you know, work being appreciated is the number one thing for them. Whereas in the UK, the number one thing is a good work-life balance. So that's just quite interesting. There you can see India, and India's more grouped career development, massively important in India. And what this does is it starts to give us some data points to think about and explore. Another tool that we use is a tool called BuzzSumo. And what we can do there is we can search by personas, keywords, and even scrape websites that tech talent go to visit and learn from, etc. and it will do a load of piece of research on what type of content they like, when we should be posting that content, should it be long form content, short form content, and the formats and the types as well, which is really interesting. It also tells us who influences that audience online. And this can be interesting because you can go and have a look at those people and see the types of content that they're producing and the formats, and use BuzzSumo, and it will tell you what of their content is sticky as well and works for them. And then that starts to lead us into the favorite types of content and the type of content for software engineers. So this would be an example of something that we've done with one of our clients, which is like, okay, videos, interview tips for Google software engineers, how-to articles, lists, why articles, what articles. It starts to give us headlines of content for a content strategy for activation into specific channels that will engage tech talent as we look to connect with them. But then that's data. So that's the data that's out there and the research from a data point of view, and some tools that you can use to gain further data points and insights. But it's insights and it's human stories is where we start to find out more information. So I just thought I'd give you an example of something that we use at PH to try and get underneath the surface and spot some of those real human insights that really make where the magic happens. So this is an example of experience mapping that we do for digital experience mapping. So imagine you've got 10 front-end developers or back-end developers in a room or a virtual room, and you say, hey folks, you know, what is the thing that made you start to think about looking for another job? They might talk about happiness, they might talk about lack of progress, feel like they're not being rewarded anymore, their L&D is not great, poor leadership. But you start to unearth what are those triggers. Then you say, well, what do you do next? You know, what's interesting with tech talent is they start to list some of these things, but they talk a lot about the people that they already know. They talk about their peer network. They're not afraid to go and research the market, but a lot of it is they know their mate, I don't know, Dave or Natasha down who works at such and such. You know, and they go out and they speak to them, and they're aware of people in their peer network. So that's quite interesting because that makes you start to think about, oh, okay, what's going on with referrals and things like that. Then we say, well, where do you go? Where do you go to look for this stuff? Well, I go and check out the career sites. I might look at certain social platforms. I might do a Google search. Interestingly, we're seeing more and more people that go into YouTube. And when you speak to them, they're going to YouTube and they're looking for videos about that company, maybe videos that even the company doesn't know exist, where it's real people who work there talking about what it's like. And then what they do is they're making playlists to come back to later. That's something we've started to see in terms of YouTube as some place to search. And it's kind of bleeding obvious when you say it, it's the second biggest search engine in the world. However, candidates, talent is starting to go to YouTube to uncover and do a bit more research themselves. It's interesting behavior. What are they trying to find out? See lots of different things there. How do you want to engage me? What are the formats of content? Voice is coming up more and more, especially with tech. They talk about writing, I forgot what they're called for Alexa. It will come back to me, but they're writing code as a pet project, stuff like this. And then how can you convince me? Inside of there, you get some great insights. I love this story. Dead simple story. We did a piece of work with Argos, and learning development is massively important to tech talent. They're really obsessed with lifelong learning. How do they progress with big tech? How do they progress with their tech stacks? How new frameworks, new codes? How can they bake stuff and break stuff and make it again? So they're always learning development. And we were chatting away to them about what was important. And then this group was like, oh, we do this L&D. What do they call it? Forgot what they call it. Not remembering much today. But they used to do this thing every 2 weeks in the tech team. And they were in teams, and they'd say, week one, say, they go, right, you go and learn about, I don't know, AI and something else. You go and learn about this. And they'd go off in teams, and then they'd come back 2 weeks later, and they'd share sound bites of what they learned. It was like accelerated learning for the latest code. When we were talking about that, going, God, this is brilliant. But the trick was they had all this great content, but they kept it within the organization. What they needed to do was ungate that and share that into the communities and towards the influencers of these communities to help make them famous and drive engagements around that. And we know that was something that would work, and that came from human insights. And as you can see, here's some of the things that we were really interested in. talked about it before, 50% would engage in the company if they already knew somebody there. So there's snippets there, and back to the data we saw before around referrals. They're very much self-starters. They'll teach themselves. A lot of them are on Stack Overflow, but they're asking questions. So again, how do you open up your network and your employees to help solve other questions to the greater community? I've got an example of that in a second. Pet projects was a big one. A lot of them have pet projects where they're making something or doing something at home. We were speaking to a guy at a bank once, and he was so proud of this code he'd written so he could tell Alexa to open his garage door. But there's ideas inside of there and how you can get involved and support them. Then we need to think about, okay, now we've learned all this stuff, what do we do with it and where do we place the message? Because it's not just about the candidate experience and attraction. There's onboarding, there's employee experience, and there's alumni. And how, referrals is somewhere where there's a real opportunity, if we get this right, that you can use the power of your internal communities to connect and engage external communities of talent just like themselves. And then there's multiple channels. When we talk about channel activation and where to place these things and where do they hang out, there's owned, paid, advocacy, talk about advocacy and referrals and alumni groups, and then events. So online events, meetups, they love a meetup. But we're starting to see that more and more companies are talking more than ever before. We've been doing this with clients for a few years now, is how do you build talent communities, not talent pools? You put people in a pool, they drown. And in a community, we go to give, not to get. How are you adding value to the tech community? And I think it's something that we should be really thinking about. Obviously, we've got the CRMs there, the world like Beamery. How do we use that to make friends before we need them? So you have an active, engaged talent community of tech talent. Monzo do this brilliantly. We've all heard of Monzo, the Challenger Bank, lots of stuff going on. Their sort of mission in life, they use to attract talent as well. So their sort of mission is something like help us build the bank you've always dreamed of. There you go, you can sort of see it on the school. Join it and help us build the bank you've always dreamed of. What they do is they run meetups, which are more virtual now, and they ask their customers, well, what would you like to be able to do with the bank you've always dreamed of? What would be the functionality? Like, how would you like to be able to use the app? All these different solutions that they would like. They then challenge their tech team. But what they do is they run meetups and invite other tech talent in to share these big problems to see what they can come up with. And it's genius because it's actually helping them fix or think about the roadmap for their product and bring fresh thinking in. But actually, it's a Trojan horse of building tech talent. It's genius. And we need to be thinking a lot more of how do we build these communities and what are the tactics that we can do. And just to sort of round up on a couple of things, we need to move from storytelling to story doing. If we think about episodic content, too often we create a piece of content, we put it out there, we don't think where it goes enough, and it doesn't get seen because it hasn't got an audience. What we need to do is identify the tech talent within your organization who you can tell episodic story doing all the way through the journey. But in terms of editorial things of that matter to tech talent, lifelong learning, career progression, having great big impact, creating big challenges, big solutions. These are the things that matter to them. The tech that they work with, all of these things matter. Remember what was at the beginning in terms of the give and the get. Remember what was in the data. Remember what comes out the human insights. Maybe talk about their pet projects. But imagine if you now had these different tech personas within your organization and they're telling their hero's journey in episodic form, long story doing form. Think about Breaking Bad. Walter White went from a teacher, to a drugs baron, basically. But it was nearly 100 episodes, but we were compelled to want to know more. We leant in and then leant back. And we can do this from the inside out. You have people today who can help you tell these stories. And as an example, just as a roundup, this is a digital manager. This is Anna. We know what motivates her. We know her learning insights, her career insights, her behaviors, where she hangs out. She works in an online fashion retailer, really progressive thinkers based in Holland, really at the edge of e-commerce and fashion. She loves her job because she can go to Milan when she can fly to Milan again, when she can go and see Milan. It's probably calmed down a little bit, but she can go to fashion shows, and that's because her job allows her to do that. Episode 1, doing what she loves with work-life balance and how work is fulfilling that need for her. Episode 1. Episode 2, her journey so far and how she's progressing. She's running her own meeting. She's leading it. She's capturing it. She's doing a little bit, on her phone, but she's telling that story in episode 2. Episode 3 is where she meets the boss. She interviews the boss and talks to him what matters in terms of where the company's going and how talent is helping driving that. And if we're clever, we'll turn that into part of the culture book, and we can use that as part of our onboarding. You put your phone over it, it plays the video. Episode 3. Episode 4 is the people behind the scenes of the product. Too often we miss the opportunity. In consumer branding, B2B branding, we'll talk about the client success stories. You all got client success stories or customer success stories, but why not take the employees who made that success happen behind the scenes? We all love a good behind the scenes. Great episodic content, and that could be your episode 4. And then finally, episode 5, live Q&A, where the audience can get to know her better and ask real, authentic questions, and maybe find out a little bit more about the harsh realities. And then finally, think about your job descriptions. We did a piece of work with Visa. We helped improve their conversion rate by 27% on cybersecurity. We've built a tool called the jobpagegrader.com. No, hold on. The jobpagegrader.com. Jobpagegrader.com. It's a free tool. You copy and paste the job description URL in, and it will score it on performance, engagement, organic visibility, and conversion. It does gender bias. Really cool tool. Have a look what your scores are, and then use this formula to rewrite your job descriptions, and you should engage and convert more talent. Think about how you can lead with empathy, create curiosity, offer insight, inspire action. And these are the questions to ask your talent, those questions, and you'll get the answers and rewrite and craft your job descriptions. And I think that's it, Natasha, pretty much.